Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
Hello, you. I see you in that little corner, reading your little book. You have my attention. What are you reading? Ugh, normal people? No, that's not you. You prefer to get your nonsense toxicity elsewhere. You search for the perfect book. Volume by volume, you're particular, I can see that. I'm literally standing right behind you. But I can fix you, Mel, and show you how great you'd be if you read your subscribers' favorite books. The timing, the spark. It's perfect. You need it. No, you need me. No, don't turn around. I'm going to save you. You just don't know it yet.
Allow me to let you all in on a little secret. For the past year, I've been collecting data without you guys knowing. Joe from You style. You may remember this post, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and you guessed it, this one too. Do you remember me asking you on videos what books you were currently reading, or your favorite book quotes, and on Instagram what your favorite books were? I've been compiling data for over a year, seeing all your favorite books and the books you'd personally recommend me, and after making a list with thousands of your responses, the time is here. I am going to be reading your favorite books. Were we here for that dramatic intro? And before we get started, this video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Squarespace is the platform to build your own sites with hundreds of templates to choose from podcasts all the way to online shops. Their features such as email campaigns, collecting donations, social sharing, member areas, and blogging tools provide all you need to freely manage your ventures and grow as a brand. On top of that, their analytics tools will help you gain powerful insights into who's visiting your site and how they're interacting with your content, which is arguably one of your most valuable assets. Head to squarespace.com/MelReads to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using code MelReads. Hello, book reading friends. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Mel, and today I bring you guys, finally, a video that has been in the making for a whole year. So just as a little bit of backstory and a little bit of context before I get into today's TBR, or this next few weeks TBR, this has been a month in the making within a year in the making. I was initially planning this video in January, I believe, or February of last year. I'll correct myself on the screen. And the original plan was to read very sneakily your favorite books in the span of a year. However, I realized how unrealistic that was. It was just too much time and I needed to condense this in a way that made sense. But how about this? We carry out research for a whole year and then we read the books in the span of a month. And that's what we're doing today. For the first time, I am going to be reading my subscribers' favorite books. For context as to how the research worked for this video, I asked you guys for an entire year what your favorite books were, and I kept tallying the votes on an Excel sheet. Every time I asked was one extra vote that each book would get. Obviously, I was prioritizing books in my bookshelf, and so the top 6 answers were the ones that I was going to be reading in this video. Things that I completely left out were books that I didn't own, obviously, books in series that I've already read. So if I've already read the first installment or the prequel, I would be reading the book following that in a series. I was underestimating you guys, if I'm being quite honest, because I thought I was out here on the streets thinking that it was gonna be like 50 responses per like question. I definitely underestimated you guys' power. At the top as the most voted for book that you guys said was your favorite one was actually a series, and that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. However, there was one book in question in this series that I had not read, and I thought it would be really interesting if I read it for this video. And so with 701 repeated answers, I am going to be reading Assassin's Blade, which is the prequel to Throne of Glass. At number 2 with 358 votes was the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. At number 3 with an astonishing 2-vote difference, 356 votes, we have the next installment in the Cruel Prince series, which is The Wicked King. At just 100 votes less, 258, we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I've heard incredible things about. With 214 votes, we've got Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second installment in the Kingdom of the Wicked series by Kerri Maniscalco. And at a whopping 160 votes, which I was not expecting for this book in particular, but 160 votes for Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So these are the 6 books that you guys told me were your favorite books of all time. I'm gonna be reading them in this vlog. Wish me luck. And let me know down in the comments your guess. Do you guys think I'm gonna like these? Which ones do you think I'm gonna like? Which ones do you think I'm gonna dislike? And let me know if you'd like to see a part 2 for this video, because I have a lot more responses to pull from. Hi. So as the first update of this magnificent video, I'm reading Kingdom of the Cursed. I still can't believe I'm making this video and that I've started this project. It just seems a little too surreal because I've been wanting to make this for such a long time. We're here. Anyway, feels very crazy right now. I'm officially 50% into Kingdom of the Cursed and I'm a little confused. Like I have so many questions. I feel like I say that in every single video, but in this, I genuinely mean it. I have so many questions. I really enjoyed Kingdom of the Wicked. However, I think my first question is, if I were to reread Kingdom of the Wicked now, would I still enjoy it as much as I did 2 years ago? Because I am really not loving this and I'm kind of struggling to push through. I'm 50% through the book. I am very confused by the pitch of this particular installment in the series. I think originally, and I may be wrong about this, but I know that when I bought Kingdom of the Wicked, I thought it was a duology and now it's a trilogy or a whole ass series. So I'm a bit confused with the series and its marketing and why it's now longer than it originally intended to be. I know that Kerri Maniscalco, ever since she was promoting it, she was saying how she had aged this up. I don't know what age up means exactly for her because the writing is still very YA and the only inkling of this potentially being new adult to adult is the steam in this book, but beyond that, everything feels very cliche and cheesy YA in a way that I'm really not enjoying. Credit to the reader is potentially 0 to none. Like I'm not even gonna give it a proper percentage because anytime there's some remark about something that happened in book 1, it is followed by a statement that completely erases any credit or any kudos to the reader in a way that almost dumps the story and the characters down and the writing too. And I just don't like when stories do that. It's like, oh, you're gonna do this, this and that. Too late. And it's the too late because it happened in book 1, but you don't have to say it. I already know it. And nobody is gonna walk into a book 2, or at least I'd hope so, without reading the first one. So where is my credit? And much like the issue I had with Furyborn, if you haven't watched the TikTok video I made, I have the same issue with this book. It's not wholly prophetic, though there are parts of like prophecies in this book, but it's also like the omens of death or chaos or whatever is happening in this book that are so cheesy. It's like one is meant to live and then the other one is meant to die in a way that I am coming to understand the more and more I read these types of books that I don't enjoy anymore, or I just don't know if I never really enjoyed them and I fooled myself into believing that I did because I'm generally not having a good time whenever any of those are mentioned. So I'm just a bit confused about the aging up part because it still reads very, very young except for the smut. There is also a thread that I seem to be identifying with this book that I'm really also not enjoying, which is how emotions are processed, them fluctuating in a way that doesn't feel real. And we go from a very steamy scene to, in the middle of the steamy scene, Emilia suddenly going, I'm very homesick, or I feel this, or I feel that, and it's suddenly distress, which obviously feelings fluctuate and there are no way of controlling them. However, the thread that it's following and what it pans into does not make a lot of sense to me. And there are also things being introduced in this book that obviously in every single installment we're gonna see something new, some new elements, some new information is going to be introduced into the story. The way that it is done here, it's like you get no foreshadowing, you get no small nuggets as you go through the story. It suddenly pops up. So we have Emilia in this book and she sees a vanity full of perfumes and she smells one and she kind of douses herself in perfume, whatever. And then she goes, I remember when Victoria used to make perfumes. She was obsessed with them and everything I learned when making perfumes I did through my sister. And it's like, it's such a random piece of information to kind kind of throw at the reader. We never saw that. So you're telling us almost a big part of their bonding as siblings, but we're not getting to see any of it. And so it seems that a lot of this book is just being told to the reader, and we're just meant to embrace that that is the world building, expansion, explanation, connections that we're getting. And I really don't like that. And also, like, every plot twist in this book is obviously obvious. I don't know what's happening with this one. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna finish it, but it's not going really well, friends. It's really, really not. Literally, send all the good vibes. Send the squadron in. A girl needs them right now. I really, really do. Mel News is sad to report that this operation did not go well. I'm honestly so sad that I didn't enjoy this as much as I wanted to. All things considered, I loved the twist, particularly with Wrath and how his connection with Emilia was going to pan out and why the two are so intrinsically connected. I think that part was really good. And the salvation of this book to me really was the relationship, because beyond that, I really don't see any appealing factor to me personally. I didn't really find anything beyond their connection really interesting. I found that the book was very repetitive in a way that I don't remember Kingdom of the Wicked being. The amount of times it was reaffirmed that Wrath was all that he was crazy. Like, it was honestly repeated so much. And then there were sequences where Emilia would say something and then she would reaffirm it time and time and time again in just a span of a few pages. So there felt like there were pages, paragraphs, sentences being added that really didn't need to be in the book because they were so repetitive. And I just found myself kind of rolling my eyes and going, I've read it 3 times now. I understand. And I mean, that's not to say that Emilia and Wrath aren't good, because you guys know I loved them in book 1 and I certainly did also like them in book 2. I think that while parts of it were wholly physical and the relationship was very sexual, those tender moments that they did have in this book were personally some of my favorites, and I liked the implementation of those. I think it was really, really good. And so with this book, it's kind of like it had good parts, it had not so great parts. I found that the world building in this one was good to an extent, but I think it also tends to be confusing because there are certain very vague elements of the world building that when I look at them, I kind of go, is that all? And so I kind of wish that we were getting more of everything, especially for a book that is being said to have been aged up. But I think I'm gonna end up giving this 2 stars, honestly, because I genuinely think that the best part of this book and the only salvation of this book was their relationship. And now for the second book of this video, I am going to be reading The Wicked King by Holly Black. Hi, also, if you can see the glare of the screen, I apologize. I'm literally sprinting right now with my patrons. I think I'm in love with The Wicked King. This book is so good. I am 142 pages in right now, and it's the way that politics, the scheming, the cunning, the political intrigue, the angst between Jude and Cardan, everything is just working for me in a way that I wasn't expecting, especially given the fact that I gave Cruel Prince 3.5 stars. But this is how you do a damn sequel. This is how you raise the stakes. This is how you make it more interesting, more intriguing. This is how you make character development happen. And this is how you prove to me that Jude is actually as smart as you claim she is, because I am seeing all of it in this book. I am just in it. I am invested. And this moment happened a while back, actually on page 57, but I just need to read this because I freaking love them. Am I going to become a stan for the Folk of the Era series by the end of this video? Maybe. Maybe. This is Cardan speaking. For a moment, I wondered if it wasn't you shooting bolts at me. I make a face at him. What made you decide that it wasn't? He grins. They missed. It's so dumb. It's so small. I'm just here. And then he says, kiss me again, drunk and foolish. Kiss me until I am sick of it. I feel those words, feel them like a kick to the stomach. He sees my expression and laughs. A sound full of mockery. I can't tell which of us he's laughing at. He hates you. Even if he wants you, he hates you. And maybe he hates you the more more for it. After a moment, his eyes flutter closed. His voice falls to a whisper as though he's talking to himself. If you're the sickness, I suppose you can't also be the cure. He drifts off to sleep, but I am wide awake. I ship them. I'm here for it. I didn't think I would say those words, but I am honestly just in love with them. I love their chemistry in this book. It's like, it's the little moments, it's the little touches, it's the subtle glances, it's the mockery, it's the hatred, but the sultriness. It's just all of those things combined that I think makes their potential relationship so good. Taryn continues to make me angry. Locke needs to die. And I think I also said that in book 1. I genuinely dislike the both of them so freaking much. And Taryn's need, and I don't know if Taryn is just incredibly codependent or if it's her, not necessarily obsession, because I wouldn't call it an obsession, but I don't know if it's her need to marry the Fae that is making her such an unlikable character and that is making her just so submissive, I guess. But every time she's in a scene, I genuinely want to slap this girl silly. Like, I genuinely want to like sit her down and have a conversation with her. Like, she really just needs a reality check of some sort, because the way that she views the world and the way that she views people, it's like she's making up her own reality in her head and normalizing it, justifying it, rationalizing it without realizing how toxic and how detrimental that can be for her. It hurts me to see it from the eyes of Jude, who is already so overprotective of her sisters. Karen needs to get it together. I love their angst. She really said, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. He kisses me harder. I hate you so much that sometimes I can't think of anything else. I'm 50 pages away from finishing this. I am very terrified for what's going to happen in the last 50 pages. Also, everything that has happened with Jude in this book has broken my heart. She is incredibly brave and incredibly cunning and incredibly smart, and I think she's proven herself to be a very active role and player into what's happening in this plot. Having to see her be broken like that is just definitely something that I wasn't expecting with this book, and it's something that again broke my heart. Also, just seeing what that did to Carden, character development for him, pain for me. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let us talk, people. I am angry, but Miss Black did that. I have to give this book 5 stars. The ending, the twists, the cruelty, the cunning, the development, the reveals. Miss Holly Black! Those last 50 pages. I never thought I'd see the day where I would say a Cruel Prince book was gonna be 5 stars, and yet here we are. It's the way these two really be so in love with each other, because it's so obvious, but they're scheming against each other all the time, and I fucking love that. I love them so much. Great, fantastic. I'm gonna go choose the next book that I'm gonna read, which I still don't know what it's gonna be. I'm just gonna go. I am just going to take myself out. I'm just going to leave, skedaddle, make some life choices, hope that they pay off.
Okay friends, so I've decided what I'm going to read next. I am both nervous and excited because it is my first time reading it and I genuinely don't know what to expect with it. So I am going to be starting Assassin's Blade by Miss Sarah Janet. This is the one book out of Throne of Glass that I never read. I am not really big into novellas. However, I know there is a very important character, arguably so, in the series that appears here, and I have yet to meet them like properly and formally. Like I obviously know who this person is. I just never really saw the beginning stages of this person. And so I'm really excited to read this, to meet Sam, and to see how it goes, because you guys know I've already read the entirety of Throne of Glass and I really love it, but there are some things context-wise for later on in the series that everybody always says Assassin's Blade is important for it. So I'm excited to experience it. I'm excited to meet these characters, and this is one that I'm definitely going to be annotating. Hello friends! So for the first update of Miss Assassin's Blade, did I literally sit here in this exact same spot when I told you guys that I was gonna start this? I feel like I did. Point is, I'm currently in sprints with Liv and Gav. Aaron was also sprinting with us earlier, and I just finished editing the video that's going up on Friday. And so now I need to keep on reading Assassin's Blade. I've been reading a little bit of it like sporadically throughout the last few days. I am literally adoring this. I forgot how much I missed the world of Throne of Glass, of Selena, and all of her assassin shenanigans. It's just so freaking good, and especially after watching Batman a few days ago. Not a few days ago, but yeah, I mean, yeah, 6 days ago. I watched it the day that it came out. I have been listening to the Michael Giacchino score as I read this with my eyes, and when I tell you guys, it is literally the best reading experience. It's just so superior. It sets the scene perfectly, and between the pace of the score and the epicness of it, combined with like my reading pace and the content of the book itself, I am absolutely living for this reading experience, and it just makes me so excited to keep on going with the series, especially also because Erin is currently reading it, and I've just been talking with her every time she finishes a book. I'm like, dude, I know, right? It's crazy. However, I'm on page 120, so I'm about to start the third novella, which is The Assassin and the Desert. I just finished Irene's novella, and I freaking love Irene Towers with my whole freaking heart. Truly one of the best characters of this whole series, and obviously we see a lot more of her in Tower of Dawn, but in this novella it just warms my heart in a way to see her getting the help that she needed in order for her to do what she needed to do, for her to follow her calling almost. It's just so freaking beautiful, and seeing the beginning stages of Selena as a character, and I think it's an interesting experience because I've already read and finished the entirety of Throne of Glass. This is the only book that I hadn't read, and reading this after Kingdom of Ash is hitting all kinds of different, because not only are all of the foreshadowings here, it's truly crazy how it's such tiny details, things that just literally seem inconspicuous, that you read, and if you've already finished the series, you go, it was there all along. And not only that, but also getting to meet characters that I've known for the entirety of the series and that I know will be relevant later on, because all of these characters are not only in the set of novellas, they actually do have a very important role in the next few books. And not only that as well, but just getting to know characters a little bit more in depth and seeing their origin story has just been something that I definitely missed out on that first reading experience. But you know, to each their own, timing ends up working out, and I'm just really excited that I'm finally getting to it. Hello, and all I have to say, the Desert novella, that shit hurted. Like, that was painful, it was sad, it was action-packed, and I don't know how any other novella in this book is going to top that one off. If you that girly who understands. Y'all, Sarah Janet ain't slick. Also, what is with me finishing books during sprints? It's where we're at. I am sitting here and I'm just going, this book more than any other Throne of Glass book just reaffirms all of the plot twists, all of the little twists later on in a way that I didn't really see any other book before the big plot twist to do. And I'm just in shock, and it was so good, and I enjoyed my time with this. The ending of this book was single-handedly the best part of this book. Beside the desert novella, everything else was just kind of okay. And I will say, I did like reading this before Throne of Glass, if only to actually see Selena be like her badass assassin self, and see her do all the good stuff, all of the crazy stuff, and to see her kind of live up to the word of mouth that is Selena Sardothian. That part I really, really liked, because I think going into Throne of Glass knowing how hyped of an assassin she is without reading Assassin's Blade and without getting this context, it was kind of underwhelming for me, because I was like, I'm not seeing the assassin stuff of it. But reading this before is definitely a game changer in terms of how much you get to see that. And so that's why I'm kind of going, why was this published? I mean, I get why though, because novellas are typically not published before, because you don't really know what kind of success the series will have. Because this was published, I believe, right after or before Heir of Fire. I can't remember exactly the order in which the books came out. I think the twist at the end, if you read this book, then you know, one of the biggest kind of moments in this book was kind of underwhelming. And I don't think it's even because I knew it was going to happen, because you know that that thing happened when you read Throne of Glass. However, I think it was more so the execution of it that felt a little bit underwhelming, because you don't really get to see it happen, but you kind of see the aftermath of it, which is not necessarily something that I vibed with as I was reading this book, but everything else, the action sequences in this were phenomenal. The red herrings, the foreshadowings, like everything is truly present in this installment, which I really, really enjoyed. And I just think in general, the tidbits that you get and the world building that you get in this book are present in the other books, but it's just really nice to see it before, for you to get like an introduction to this world, what happened with the King of Adarlan and everything else. And so now I'm really, really excited to walk into Throne of Glass and to see what I think there, because this was quite a nice experience. And I also really liked seeing Selena not necessarily be vulnerable in the way that she's been in other books, but open herself to the idea of love and having a relationship, and opening herself up to the right people, or to the people that she deems worthy or are right to open up with. And so I really liked that. I liked her bond with Sam a lot, but I don't know what I'm gonna rate this. That to also say that I'm starting Sorcery of Thorns and see everything that Margaret Rogerson has to offer with this one, and to also see if you guys are right about those Howl's Moving Castle, Dark Academic vibes, because I'm gonna be searching for those. Y'all, I am bored out of my mind. Hello. So, I have started Sorcery of Thorns. We're still sprinting. And I am officially 40% into the book. And I literally could not care less about what's happening. It is a really interesting premise, and I will say the beginning of the book was really interesting, where you have the main character whose name is Elizabeth, and she is a scrivener, which basically is an apprentice to becoming a warden within libraries. So I will assume, because it's still not quite clear, that she will take care of books and kind of keep them safe, because books are alive in this world and they speak to you depending on the level that they are. There's grimoires, and books can really obviously be helpful. Knowledge is power, all that sort of thing. One day, the inciting incident happens. She is framed for murder, and she is essentially taken to the magisterium in order to be tried for her quote-unquote crime. And so everything that's happened so far, it's like so uninteresting. The only thing that is remotely interesting to me is her relationship and her banter with Nathaniel. However, Margaret Rogerson is obsessed with this. In this book, there is virtually no excuse as to why she's doing this, because this book is over 400 pages. This is like 450 pages long, and she still insists on making the characters have 4 interactions, 5 interactions, all of which have no emotional ties. Like, they are not speaking very personally to each other. Both of them are very detached from each other, and she yet insists focus on making them not necessarily fall in love, because the word love has not been dropped, but for them to care more than they've ever cared about another person. And it's just so unrealistic that I'm sitting here and I'm like, did it with an Enchantment of Ravens. It worked for me upon a reread, but why is it happening in this book when they literally have had virtually no bonding time? And it always bothers me when that thing is dropped in books. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And in this book, in my opinion, it doesn't work, and it's really bugging me. Literally nothing about this book so far, to me at least, is interesting. And this book is giving Howl's Moving Castle vibes. I think Nathaniel in particular is very much giving Howl's vibes, but is that enough to make me hooked? And so this book so far is just like all vibes, nothing else, but I don't even care about the vibes because the everything else is what I also should care for, and I don't. But for the sake of continuity and for the sake of y'all and maybe this having some sort of turnaround, I will keep reading it to see what in the world happens, but I don't care. I literally could not care less. Sorry to break it to you, but not a fan. So, hi. It's been an eventful couple of days. First of all, I'll literally turn the camera around in a second and show you. Though if you follow me on Instagram, you've already seen what's happened. However, Sorcery of Thorns. Sorcery of No, because there is nothing interesting about this book. The pacing of this was absolutely horrid. What book have you ever read where the beginning is incredibly boring, the middle is interesting, and then the ending loses you again? I have never seen anything so messy in terms of execution, and so the only part of this book that I cared about was Silas. Like, not even Elizabeth, not even Nathaniel, not even anything else. It's like the only compelling part of this was Silas, his relationship with Nathaniel, his relationship to the Thorn family in general, and how there seemed to be almost this inner war going on with Silas and who he believed himself to be versus him and his duty to the Thorn family as a demon. Honestly, that to me was the most compelling part of that book, and I honestly, like, I'm happy with the ending, not gonna lie, because if you've read the book, then you know how it ends. Everything else, I was just kind of sitting there and I was like, really? And even the romance, like, the romance was fine. I didn't think this would hit so little in comparison to an Enchantment of Ravens. I genuinely thought, given the vibes that everybody said this book would be, that I would love this. And it still is kind of those Howl's Moving Castle vibes. I would not brand this as a dark academia. I would brand this maybe as a light academia because the vibes are very different. But the Howl's vibes are definitely there with Nathaniel, with the cape, with the magic, with how he treats Elizabeth at the start of the book and how the relationship progresses. It's very much giving Howl's. I have Howl's for that. And the magic system was uninteresting too. It was literally sprinkled on top, but it was not a magic system that's gonna stay with me long term at all. So very disappointed in this, and that's all I can say. Like, literally, when I tell you guys, I'm going to forget this book in like 3 months from now, and I'm very sad that I didn't enjoy this. Hopefully Vespertine hits a little bit better. I think I'm gonna give this like 2 stars. Also, let me show you what you missed because I need to show you guys this. So my floor, it's broken. Literally. What's happening? It's too much. This has been my weekend. Anyways, so there's that. I'm very sad that I didn't like this, and honestly, it took me so long to read too because I was not looking forward to picking it up. And I hope that this goes differently because when I tell you guys, I'm already scared about this book because I know how many people did not like this, but I know y'all love this. So I am doing this for you. I was like, I'm never reading this. I'm so scared. I'm never reading this. I'm reading it today. So I'm gonna be reading The Crown of Gilded Bones. If this goes wrong, y'all will hear from me, and let's hope it goes well. It is super late. It's literally 1:05 a.m. So I did some impromptu sprints on Patreon today and they were super helpful, especially to edit because currently they're carrying out construction in the apartment to fix the floor. And let me show you guys. Let me show you what this is looking like because the living room is looking all kinds of crazy. I took this as they were still taking off the tiles. This is what the living room is looking like. However, I have reached 50% of The Crown of Gilded Bones. And there's a lot of thoughts going around my head right now with this one. And this is where I once more wonder if I would have reread the first and second book, how would I feel about them now? Because I did read these books, the first and second one, in 2020. So it's been like a year and then some. Like it's been a year and a half since I've read the first two books. And what I do like about it is that it's easy enough to get back into, especially because the second book ends in a big cliffhanger. And what JLA tends to do a lot of, finishing a book and then the next one starts exactly how the last one ended. So it's a direct continuation of what happened in the last one, which I kind of do like. However, what I will say about this book is that I'm very conflicted. It's giving Serpent and Dove in the way that the book wasn't good, or at least it wasn't my cup of tea, but I can't stop reading it at the same time. The plot of the From Blood and Ash series has a lot of potential. You guys know me, I am a sucker for anything to do with deities, anything to do with big plot twists, bloodshed, vampires, werewolves, magical powers, just all of that good stuff I'm like so into. And this book has all of those elements. I think in particular, it's been a minute since vampire stories were quote unquote mainstream in the way that we saw The Discovery of Witches, the way that we saw Twilight, Vampire Academy, and just a bunch of other vampire books that were really famous in their era. And so I was really excited when we were gonna get From Blood and Ash, and we knew, even though obviously JLA has rebranded everything in a way that she's making it her own with the name of the creatures, we still do know that at their core, they're vampires and werewolves and some sort of deity connected magical beings. Even the conflict in this book is interesting. People wanting to usurp the throne, people not wanting god spawns on Earth, people not wanting deities, people shunning that, and then creatures who have just been made and warped and are all nasty and evil. But I think it's the writing style that is holding this back so much. And I think I've noticed it more in this book than I think I noticed it in book 1 or 2, because I don't remember the first two books being like that. If you guys have read the books more recently, or if you guys are more acquainted with this, which I will assume you are because you love this series, but I find that JLA has a very interesting and something that doesn't work for me style when it comes to this fantasy series, or at least this book, where she tends to use a lot of colloquial lingo. And when it comes to fantasy stories, there is nothing that takes me out of a story when people are talking in diminutives, or when conversations just seem too colloquial for the space that we're in. Something as fantastical as this world, literally characters making blood rain down on their enemies. When you look at that, and when you look at the fantastical aspects and elements of this book, you'd expect the lingo, you'd expect the atmosphere to go along with it. And sadly, the two are just so disconnected that it seems like I'm reading two different books. I'm reading the plot on one end, and I'm reading the plot twist and the world building, and then in a completely separate realm reside the smut and the character interactions and the character growth, and they just don't seem to mesh very well in this book. There have been so many interactions where it's serious talk. They're literally talking about the war brewing. They're literally trying to figure out what is happening to Poppy, who Poppy really is, what it means on the grander scheme of things when it comes to the conflict of the world and the world that they live in, what it means for the monarchy, what it means for Castile and his family, what it means for Castile and Poppy themselves, what it means for the Wolven, what it means for the lore and the mythos that they know from their deities and gods. It's so interesting on a grander scheme, but they're having these really repetitive conversations, and in the midst of those conversations are really out of place or inappropriate jokes that do not mesh well with the tone of the conversation. And I think that's kind of where this goes, is that this book is very tone deaf. It does not decide whether it wants to have simplistic language for the sake of everybody understanding and it being a fantasy book that is very easy to get into, or if it wants to be an epic new adult smutty fantasy romance, and it really is not deciding between the two. And I think when it comes to my feelings of the book, I am as confused as the writing in it, because it really doesn't make any sense to me. The smut in this book is also something that happens in the weirdest of sections, and again, there seems to be this disconnect between what is happening and what the author is kind of putting onto the story for the sake of creating some sort of fan service, which I am definitely not vibing with. And it's strange because I am enjoying the tidbits that I'm getting. I just feel like for such a long book, not a lot has been happening, and the things that have been happening are super repetitive, or the sequences are over very quickly because the author is more concerned with character banter, the main characters having sex, or discussions of sex. And JLA just seems to be so much more concerned with trivial matters versus what actually matters in the story. And it's really bothersome because, again, this has so much potential to be so freaking great. And I'm just here wondering why we got a whole scene about how this woman is naked and she just starts drinking the blood of her husband, and he decides to really dryly so, without any foreplay, decides to ram into her as if this is a fucking rodeo. It's just so weird. And also, that's something that bothers me so much about some fantasy romance books. Why are we just going in dry? Like, do we not know any anatomy? Do we not know any sex ed? Because I'd like to understand. It's like they get a look and they're like, oh, I'm ready. So that's just kind of where I'm at. It's just been really repetitive. I think it's the fact that nobody knows up until somebody decides to talk. That's really bothering me. And it's been a constant thread in this book where they have so many questions about so many things, and everybody decides to just keep the information on the download to be quiet. They're like, oh, we actually, like, we don't know. We don't know what that means. We don't know what it is. Like, we don't know where it came from. Like, I'm sorry, don't know who you are. 5 chapters later, they're like, it is the best kept secret of this land. And I'm just like, why are we doing this? Like, it does not need to be done this way. If you have the information, let's just talk. Or because the characters are acquiring information, but then they disregard it as false, and then 4 chapters later, after giving it so many circles, they're like, oh, well, I guess it's kind of true. It's like, then why did we waste 4 chapters to figure out if it's true or not? And so we're just running around in circles at this point with the true answers. And also, at this point, the plot twist is so obvious. I still have 300 and like, I don't know, like 30 pages to get through. And for what? Like, we already know what's going to happen at this point because they keep reaffirming it. They're like, there's no way. I'm like, we all know there's a way. But what JLA tends to do a lot, and it's driving me crazy because it's giving Wattpad energy, but like the bad kind, because I have read some great books on that platform, okay? I love me some Wattpad. You know, when Wattpad authors would break the chapters in between scenes and they just continue the scene on the next chapter, but they really only do it because they want the interaction and they want the votes and they want the comments and they just want to kind of section the story off in a way that it benefits the Wattpad algorithm, but not necessarily because they have to be different chapters, because at the end of the day, same scene, same chapter. But this book is giving those vibes. She breaks chapters in between scenes in the most inconvenient of places, I will say. Let's say I'm talking to someone and I go, oh my God, I want some water. And then she breaks chapter, starts next chapter, and then the next chapter starts with the other person responding, I'll get you some water. For why? I don't know what to say, y'all, but the way that this is structured is so odd to me. They're really trying to make it seem deeper than it is, and like, it really ain't that deep, bro. Like, it really ain't that deep. Miss Lynn? Jennifer Lynn? For why? Let's just hope that this does something, because if it does nothing, Jennifer Lynn, we're gonna have to talk. Also, as I'm about to just lay in bed and read while this video export, let me not forget to say that if these two mention how they are each other's everything one more time, I will go nuts because I've heard enough. Hi friends, ignore the stain. It's the way I played myself real hard. I always forget that when I'm reading ebooks on Kindle, since Amazon also owns Goodreads, I forget that if I finish a book, it just automatically logs it onto Goodreads. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't, so it's always very confusing. And I literally, kid you not, finished this damn book on ebook. You know what it did? It logged it on Goodreads. I was so fast though, because I freaked the fuck out. I was like, the one book I do not want people to know that I'm reading up until this video comes out is the one book that Goodreads logs. Like, come on, like, what is my luck? Anyway, I finished this book. It did not give, y'all. I am so sorry, but this book did not give. I have many qualms with the structure of the story, and Miss Lynn, we need to have some words. And apparently there's a whole lot of drama happening right now because people are hating the War of the Two Queens, and I'm just kind of laughing on the sidelines because I'm like, I don't think people are gonna be wrong about this one. Sometimes I see book reviews, and granted, some people go really far as to rating 1 star a book that they haven't read in order for the book just to get bad press, a bad rep, a bad rating, about all of it. I personally don't stand behind that. I personally just, let's be mature. Let's not have a vendetta where a vendetta does not need to be had, especially if you haven't read a book. And given how this book went, like I don't see how the next book could be better than this. Again, this is coming from somebody who really enjoyed book 1 and 2. This did not give. It was so long and literally fucking nothing happened. You know what I felt I read? I feel like I read the Scooby Gang for 658 pages, trying to figure out everything and anything from the world building to who's who, to who has which power, to where do the gods come from, to what's possible, to what's impossible, to people withholding information and then believing that the information's right, but turns out the information is wrong, to twists and turns very reminiscent to Throne of Glass and Aquatar, with relationships trying to emulate relationships that I've seen before in other fantasy romance books, and I don't vibe with that. And I know some people are gonna like that a lot, and that's completely fine. They're gonna be like, oh, I'm looking for something, you know, very reminiscent of Faysand or very reminiscent of Rowayland. And that's great. I'm glad you could find something. Not I. This was messy, and one of the things that bothered me the most about this book was the world building magic system that is literally hanging by a fucking thread, and the thread is so fucking thin, it's like walking on thin ice on top of a thin thread. Like, this is barely standing as like good world building magic system. Half of it doesn't make sense, half of it is interesting, and it has a lot of potential. Also, the fact that JLA relays a lot of the world building or a lot of the important information, if not all of it, through dialogue is irking me like you have no idea. The entire book, everybody was finding important information, again, about the magic system, world building, characters, plot twists, all through dialogue. There is nothing that characters do quest-wise, investigation-wise, that they stumble upon a piece of information, maybe like a big reveal through an item, through a book. It's all done through dialogue, and it irks me so much, because if you don't diversify the avenues that you're using to build your story, to build your world, it's just not interesting execution. And so I was just reading the entire book and I was like, where's the atmosphere? A. B, why is everything being told to me? And even though the world building was dispersed throughout the book, when it was happening, it was so info dumpy that I just kept checking how much of the chapter I had left because it was so long and so dragged out for absolutely no reason. And this book is literally just running around in circles trying to find the one definitive answer that is so fucking obvious for the entirety of the story that when you reach the end, it's like, really? Like, you had to pull out those 2 last twists out of your ass to try and make this interesting. It's not. It's not given. And now this bitch is gonna Daenerys Targaryen the world? No. Why are we trying to George R.R. Martin this series? No. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. There's no way. The character development also makes absolutely no sense. This girl jumps from insecure to being this vengeful persona out of absolutely nowhere, and everything surrounding it is just so uninteresting that I don't buy a single thing that is being told to me. Honestly, I should have expected it. I'm sorry that I didn't enjoy your favorite book. So now, in the hopes of having a better experience, I am gonna start Daisy Jones and the Six. So hopefully this bodes well for me. I also have the audiobook, which I've heard really incredible things about. Yes, we'll see how this goes. Hi friends, so I am currently on Sprint with Aaron, Liv, and Katie, and I am reading the last book for this video, which is Daisy Jones and the Six, and I am already 205 pages in. I am having the best time with Daisy Jones, and you guys know kind of like my track record with Evelyn Jones. Evelyn Jones? Mel. with Evelyn Hugo. There were a lot of parts of that book that I really enjoyed, and then there were a lot of parts in execution that I feel could have been handled better, particularly with the nuance of the themes that Taylor Jenkins Reid was addressing in that book. However, Daisy Jones, I feel like this is gonna be my girl because this is ridiculous. I am 205 pages in, and how is that what I've done to this book? And that's not my thing. My thing is that my copy looks like this. Like, it looks absolutely crazy, and I am loving every second of this. So in this one, we follow obviously Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a band, and we follow a series of interviews to kind of recount and try and find out the truth of why this band broke up. This is a rock band. It's very reminiscent of like Fleetwood Mac. I believe the inspiration for the book was Fleetwood Mac, and so I love the vibes in this, and I really like all of the conversations being had about the music industry. I think particularly when you talk about rock music and how the industry has led itself for so long, particularly also in the 70s, 80s, a lot of what was happening that we know of, artists abusing substances, whether it was drugs or alcohol, having these big massive parties and people sleeping around. It was very chaotic. It was very just the high life, and I think it definitely establishes the sort of conversation about when you reach that kind of success and you reside in this industry that seems to be so shallow and where a lot of immoral things happen on a daily basis, you kind of feel yourself in a way being coerced by all of that, and you kind of find yourself peer pressured, not necessarily for everybody, but you kind of find yourself walking into that and telling this story. I don't know if we can call it vignettes, but telling the story in an interview style is really, really interesting because not only do we get a taste of kind of every messed up thing that happens within the music industry, entertainment industry in general, because I don't think it's exclusive to the music industry, but when you pair that with the interviews, you kind of get this really uncertain tone to what people are saying, and you don't really know what is factual and what is people embellishing. You don't know what's a lie, and you can tell sometimes when they are being interviewed and they're being asked about very specific things, how sometimes what they're saying doesn't add up, doesn't match up with what the other person is saying, who is also involved in that particular scenario. And so I really like almost the uncertainty behind the story, where you can't really define as a reader what's true and what isn't, and where things are being omitted in order to look good. And I really, really like that. I also like all of the inner rivalries between the band as well, and them not necessarily getting along with each other and butting heads, and you can kind of see how the tension starts building up towards a potential breaking point. So I think structurally and in execution, it's just a really different story. I've never seen anything like this. I'm also not even listening to the audiobook because I'm having such a fun time reading it physically, but I am really enjoying this, and this is exactly what I needed for this video because I think it's well on its way to being the highest rated book in this video, and I'm very much here for it. Page 324 of Daisy Jones. No, the person I will become when this show comes out, y'all don't want to see me. Like, y'all don't want to see me. I'm prepared to cry. Let's go. I know where it's going. No! Why did we decide to put me through so much pain? I'm sorry, but like, I literally just read the best book that I've read this year so far, and it's called Daisy Jones and the Six. Wow, the oral history structure to the story only made it better, made it more personal. The way that everybody differs from each other in their arguments, and you can see how complicated and nuanced relationships really are, just worked so perfectly for the story. And it can get a tad annoying sometimes when you're like reading something and it feels valid, because at the end everything is valid, but you read something and you're like, oh, that is the truth, and then you kind of hear somebody else deny the claim, and it just makes it so much more complex than if you were reading only from one point of view. The way that relationships are written in this book, whether it's Billy, Daisy, Camilla, Graham, Karen, you can see how relationships are complicated, and a lot of the things that you end up doing or choosing in a relationship is a gamble of faith and devotion and choice. And I absolutely love Camilla, the way that she just had so much faith in people and so much love for people, and despite every odd and despite every hurdle on the road and despite every easy opportunity and opening of just giving up, how she didn't choose that, dude. And it just kind of reminds me of Colleen Hoover's book All You're Perfect, and how in that book she said that how being in a relationship is kind of being an athlete. It's being in a race together, and if one gives up along the road, then it's up to the other to pick that person up and help them run so that they can match each other's pace. And Camilla was the perfect example of that throughout the entirety of this book, and I'm just in awe of her. Even though she's not real, I'm just in awe. Like, I have no words for her and everything she was willing to do, and every sacrifice she was willing to make, and every blind act of faith that she decided to carry through for her girls, for her husband, was absolutely stunning. And once more, the message being reaffirmed of you can't really fix other people, they have to want to fix themselves. And regardless of how many times you bring something up, and regardless of how many times you push the person to do something, they won't really do anything if they don't feel like they need the help. And it's sad and unfortunate that some of these characters have to reach their breaking point and their lowest low in order for them to realize that that's exactly what they need. But in the end, you kind of see the power of choice in a lot of these things. I feel myself going down my blues rock era once more, and I thought Mel was over that. I mean, kind of. I still listen to blues rock, but I feel like I'm gonna go down like my guitar battle era on YouTube again. Beth Hart, Joe Bonamassa, like I just feel it in my soul, and I'm not mad at it. This literal masterpiece. Like, I don't think I have ever done what I did to this book to like anything else, and I don't know, you guys don't know, and I don't know the type of person I will become when the show comes out, because Sam Claflin as Billy is gonna be fucking perfect, and I am just so happy that y'all made me read this, because honestly, why did it take me so long? And also, the way that all of these characters are so messed up, that does not make them bad people, they just make bad choices. There's like such a clear distinction between the two, and just the message of unrequited love, unrequited love, unrequited love, however the fuck that's pronounced. I genuinely, at this point, I'm just like, the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes about not necessarily one-sided love, but perhaps being with the right person at the wrong time, wrong person, right time, it just did something to tug at my heartstrings, and oh my god. Like, I don't think I've ever defaced a copy of a book this hard. There's just something so raw and so real, but also so poetic about the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote this book. And I also think that because of the oral history method in the writing, it just hits all kinds of different, because they really do feel like real people. Taylor Jenkins Reid, hats off to you, sweetie, because I'm joining the hype train for this book, and I will never shut up. Thank you.
All right. We have reached the end of this, you guys. We have reached the very end of me reading your favorite books. It has been a journey and a half, let me tell you. What an interesting thing it has been for a number of reasons. Not only seeing how my reading taste has evolved over the past 2 years, but also seeing how our reading tastes compare depending on the series, on the book, on the writing, on the author, etc. But it was a really interesting project to carry out, and I kind of want to do it again, because I honestly have a list of over 100 books that you guys replied with, which is a lot to work with, and I really had to condense it for this video, but I think
think maybe like a few others would be really interesting to read here. So this was the stack of books that I read for this video. I still can't believe that it's like quite over. Part of me is both in denial that it's over, and then the other part of me is kind of like really glad that this is now out there, because this has been eating me alive for the past year. Reading these books also without like properly telling people what they were for was killing me alive too. And so I'm just really excited that I've read these. Let me see what the final ranking will be for these. 1 second. I think this is going to be my final rating. Pound of Gilded Bones is most definitely at the bottom. This was bad. This was jarring. This was nasty. This was just not it in any capacity. 1 whole star for effort, okay? Like the little star the teachers give you just because it's just like a pity vote. That's kind of how I feel about Crown of Gilded Bones. Followed by, no, I put them backwards. Wait, I've got the right order now. Followed by Sorcery of Thorns, which I definitely I was expecting so much more out of Sorcery of Thorns. People sold this to me as like a dark academia, Howl's Moving Castle, and while there were elements of both of them, the dark academia part, I think some of y'all are using that very freely, probably a little bit freer than y'all should be using that for. Then Kingdom of the Cursed was interesting because I already had a feeling that I was not gonna like it, but I was hoping for me to like it. It was still a more entertaining ride than Sorcery of Thorns though. I will say Sorcery of Thorns had me bored for a lot of it. At least the shenanigans in Kingdom of the Cursed had me entertained, even though they were not that great either. Followed by The Assassin's Blade, which I really enjoyed, and I think it's really great to kind of catch the foreshadowings for later on in the series, even though I kind of already knew everything that happened in it. The Wicked King, the Wicked King, the Wicked King, the damn Wicked King, Mr. Carden, he did it for me. She did that in those pages. I'm also setting that down because it's heavy, but at the very top, y'all, Daisy Jones to the motherfucking 6. Let's go. This was so good. The person I will be now that I get to talk about this book, y'all don't understand. I will be unbearable. I will be unstoppable. I will be annoying. I will be that bitch that will never shut up about Daisy Jones and the Six. It has got me back in my blues rock era, okay? Watching my guitar battles, watching all of the live performances, all of the parallels that Taylor Jenkins Reid drew between this and Fleetwood Mac, and also Stevie Nicks and Lindsay Cummings. Everything was just so perfect, and knowing what exactly she was drawing inspiration from, and her seeing that first scene in the dance show where she got to see Stevie and Lindsay together singing Landslide, and then her also singing as a woman scorned later in the show, and them having a very public relationship, but then her subverting that and having this really tense dynamic between Billy and Daisy. It was just so freaking phenomenal, and all of the parallels are there, but I love how she made it her own. It was absolutely masterpiece, and I didn't even listen to the audiobook. And that is it for today, you guys. That was me reading your favorite books. Did it turn out the way that you expected? Did you think I was gonna have this final rating? Let a girl know down in the comments. Let a girl know if, I mean, obviously a lot of you guys have read these books. Let a girl know if you've read them, if you've enjoyed them, what your thoughts are, what the tea is. Let a girl know everything down in the comments. If you reached the very end of the video, let's leave the 100 emoji, because this was 100, okay? This was just too much. It was just a lot happening in the span of a year, but I'm very excited that I did this, even though it was driving me nuts for the majority of the year. Don't forget to give this video a massive thumbs up down below if you enjoyed it, and subscribe down below for more bookish content that I am always uploading on this corner of the internet. If you would like to support the channel further, I do have a Patreon. We call ourselves the Citadel, and that is always linked down below alongside all of my social medias. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everybody who left a reply. This has truly been a crazy ass journey, and I shall see you on the next one. Bye guys.